You want to support Roland Martin Unfiltered? Be sure to join our Bring the Funk fan club. Every dollar that you give to us supports our daily digital show. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real as Roland Martin Unfiltered. Support the Roland Martin Unfiltered daily digital show by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. You can make this possible. Jane, we've witnessed in the past week, we've witnessed Senator Tim Scott come out and talked about America, not racist America. Democrats fall right into the trap. Folks start going back and forth on this whole very issue here. And what is interesting to me are the folks who want to get caught up, racist, not racist, not racist, racist, as opposed to what are the effects the policies are having on actual people.
Number one, the effects on people who look like me are to cause them tremendous fear because they know that within 30 years, and now it's about down to 20 years, we melanemic people will be a numerical minority in the United States of America. That's the way it is. And incidentally, this is not America. America is everything from the northernmost point of Canada to the southernmost point of South America. And we, in our arrogance, call it America, as if the 48 contiguous states, Alaska, Hawaii, and the islands off the southeastern coast of the United States are all that constitutes America. We've got to change our vocabulary. I'm an educator. Educators are engaged in the business of leading people out of ignorance. And I've been sitting here for the last about 30 minutes listening to total ignorance coming out of the mind of a person who's young enough to be taught better. And he needs to be re-educated. And the rest, and the Proud Boys, the Oath Keepers, that whole group of mostly white, fairly young men, of course, for me, everybody's young, but most of them are old enough to know better, but too damn young to care. And you cannot solve things by saying to people, my mind's made up, don't confuse me with facts. That's exactly what this young gentleman is doing. And that's exactly what most of us are doing most of the time in this country right now. We want to pretend that what we have is what we have described. It isn't. This is the land of the free and the home of the brave. I'm one of the free, and that young man has to become brave. He has to be brave, and his mother has to be extremely brave if she's going to live in this country, which is getting increasingly racist in its behaviors and its attitudes because of the fear of white people that when people of color get power, they're going to want to treat us the way we have treated them. That is the major problem in the United States right now, is white fear of retribution. I think we could give up that fear. I have watched people go through this exercise, the blue-eyed, brown-eyed exercise, and after it's over, I have heard them say, I had no idea. I will not abuse people. I will not make them feel the way I felt when I was on the bottom. I never knew how it felt to be on the bottom before. Now I've found out how that feels. I will never do something that will make someone feel the way I felt for just an hour and a half. I think we have misjudged the intelligence and the humanity of a whole lot of people of color, and that's why we're afraid of them.
Greg Carr, the last week and a half, we've listened to Fox News and all of these other folks, these conservatives, whine about critical race theory. They're running their mouths. Oh, my God, critical race theory is Marxist and it's destroying America. Yet Nikki Haley's out there. Yet when you ask them to define it, they can't even define it, Greg. They're just spouting a talking point.
Well, that's the whole point. The whole point. Professor Elliott has, and it's good to be in community with you. And hey, Reese, we definitely missed you, sis. Having followed your work for many years, and certainly the blue-eyed, brown-eyed test, many of us have seen that the one of the videotapes of the exercise. I think it was Oprah you were engaged in showing at that time. You make a very important point when it comes to language. The power of whiteness in many ways lies in its invisibility. And it was interesting as CJ, as you kind of were talking, you drug Professor Elliott into whiteness. She used the word white. It's very difficult to, as she would know better than all of us, to jailbreak that language. But as my friend, the philosopher Lucius Outlaw down at Vanderbilt often says, I can call that bus coming toward me the wind. but if I step in front of it, the wind will run me over. In other words, there is the effect that language has in a social reality. So CJ, I feel you, brother, when you say that no white person or no person who has been marked white has the right to say anything to how we try to navigate being black in a society where whiteness or the concept of whiteness is the norm. This is James Baldwin and them. At the same time, no, brother, I would have to say that you probably more than all of us as a Gen Zer understand the power of branding. You're a digital native. You haven't been alive at a time when we didn't have cell phones or YouTube or the internet. And so what we're seeing is the weaponized ignorance. And Professor Elliott, you're fighting against it, absolutely. In the real tradition, there was a journal out of Boston many years ago called Race Trader, and you probably familiar with it and knew it. You know, their motto was "Treason to whiteness is loyalty to humanity." In other words, we have to dismantle this hierarchical thinking. But what we're seeing instead, Roland, to the point that you're raising, people are using critical race theory as a term. And very few people, including people who would be called critical race theorists, know much, if anything, about the origins. Critical race theory comes out of the law, legal studies, law schools, really, and its roots are in something called critical legal studies, which goes back to the late 50s, early 1960s. It's really a dialogue about the nature of how we organize human societies and what are the standards by which we'll live. And that includes the law, that includes ethics and morals, and it really is a critique of the inflexibility of some of the categories. Over the years, Derek Bell, very important in this dialogue, the late Derek Bell and others, began to use that critique of the law and frame it in the context of race. And saying, for example, Derek Bell would say, let's do a thought exercise. What if instead of overturning Plessy versus Ferguson, Brown versus Board of Education had affirmed Plessy versus Ferguson and said, you know what? Separate was never equal, so let's make separate equal. Give them the exact same money you're giving the white schools. Now, that was a thought exercise designed in some ways to do some of the work that Professor Elliott has been doing, namely jailbreak how we think about hierarchy. That's where critical race theory kind of emerged. It's about narratives. It's about posing different kind of questions, forcing people to think. That is exactly not what these white nationalists, and I'm using white not because they are white, we're all Africans if you look at the parents of everybody on the ball, but I'm using white as the social reality that has real world consequences. Just like if I change the name of the bus to the wind, I'd still step out in front of getting run over. I can call it melanated, demelanated, whatever, but the cop is still going to say, you're melanated, hands up, boom. My point is I'll still suffer because of the concepts. We have to figure out a way to tune out the distractions. CRT is the new socialism, critical race theory. Left is the new N-word in many ways, because we say left, what the signal is, I mean, you know, them people who are over there with those black people. When you say, platforms are the new soapbox, people are engaging in word war as proxy for real war. Meanwhile, people who say, I'm voting for Trump because I'm an evangelical, and Trump is a symptom. Let's be very clear. The Republican Party has been the home of white nationalism for quite some time. People are now rallying behind Lynn Cheney when Lynn Cheney's policy record is just like Donald Trump's. But people are saying, well, she's a woman. No, stop being distracted. What you're seeing is these folks are killing themselves to preserve something that isn't real. They are literally picking their imagined whiteness over their lives. And so rather than try to argue with them, I'm going to leave that to the Jane Elliott's of the world. Go with God. Sister Elliott, go with God. As an African in this world, I don't care whether the United States survives. What I care about is whether humanity can survive America.
All right, folks, back to our Roland Martin Unfiltered video in just one moment.
It's time to be smart. When we control our institutions, we win. This is the most important news show on television of any racial background. Y'all put $2, $3, $4, $5, $10, $15, $20, $30 on this and keep this going. What you've done, Roland, since this crisis came out in full bloom. Anybody watching this, tell your friends, go back and look at the last 2 weeks, especially of Roland Martin Unfiltered. I mean, hell, go back and look at the last 2 days. You've had sitting United States senators today, Klobuchar and Harris. Whatever you have that you can bring to Roland Martin Unfiltered to support it, please do, because this information may literally save your life.
Watch Roland Martin Unfiltered daily at 6 p.m. Eastern on YouTube, Facebook, or Periscope, or go to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Support the Roland Martin Unfiltered Daily Digital Show by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Our goal is to get 20,000 of our fans contributing $50 each for the whole year. You can make this possible. RolandMartinUnfiltered.com.